So Media Matters put together a little remix of a Tucker Carlson segment on rioters and looters. Now, he's been somewhat surprisingly, I don't know if it's like very surprising. It's a little bit surprising because every now and then he throws a curveball and he's better than the other Fox hosts in that he'll be like, hey, you know what? War is bad. And people are like, whoa, wow. He believes that very, very banal but reasonable thing. That's interesting. Sometimes on trade, he does that too. But a lot of the times, he's a standard Republican. And on this one, I thought this was a little bit surprising. He went full-on law and order, authoritarian, let's not get to the root of what the protesters are mad about. Or look at his commentary on... Now, he's talking about rioters and looters. He's talking about what he views as like these groups of Antifa thugs. But look at the brilliant job that Media Matters did splicing this together with a lot of the police brutality that's been happening over the past few days.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. First, they smashed the windows and our elected leaders said nothing. Before long, it grew. Mobs of menacing young men formed in the streets. They were clearly intent on violence, but no one in authority dared criticize them. And so the mobs grew larger and they grew emboldened. They did this in the name of justice. Still, our leaders did nothing. Most of them never even mentioned it, like it never happened. Did you watch that? How many more nights like this can we take? Who will enforce the laws? Who will be in charge? Well, violent young men with guns will be in charge. They will make the rules, including the rules in your neighborhood. They will do what they want. You will do what they say.
Fucking stupid! Shut up! I can't! That shit don't work here!
No one will stop them. You will not want to live here when that happens.
That's just so well done. So there's a bunch to say about this. I'll start with the obvious point. State violence isn't moral by definition. This is something that Tucker and his ilk seem to understand when there's violence targeted against right-wing groups, individuals, protesters. They understand it then, like, oh, okay, wait, hold on now. The government isn't right by definition. State violence isn't magically on some higher moral plane. That's just not the case. He's criticized the Iraq War before. So he obviously understands just because the government is doing something doesn't make it right. Just because we have uniforms and we're invading a foreign country doesn't mean that, you know, we're correct because we're wearing the uniforms and we appear to be a lot more official or whatever. So a badge and a gun and a uniform doesn't make you right. But now he seems to kind of be falling into that trap. It's the, Alonzo from the movie Training Day trap, where, amazing performance by Denzel, by the way, but the mindset is, hey, listen, I am the law. So whatever I do is okay. Because I am the law. So that's a terrifying mindset. And just so everybody understands, that the police brutality they showed in this clip with Tucker, this is not even scratching the surface, dog. We played a compilation on our show the other day. Jordan Ewell put it together, and it was something else. But since then, he's continued to pump out the compilations of police violence, and you would be floored as to how much there is where they're unquestionably initiating the violence against peaceful people. Without a doubt. So there are so many instances of that happening. Guys, one of the things they're flat out bragging about, there was somebody on video asking an officer, I don't know if it was in New York or D.C. or wherever it was, but the person says, what happens if we're out here past curfew? And the cop says, we're going to beat the fuck out of you. And then they did. The second that it was past curfew, all of a sudden the cops initiate violence on completely peaceful protesters. Now you could say, hey, they should have abided by the curfew, but just so you understand, the curfews in and of themselves are very controversial, and U.S. courts are actually split on whether or not they're even constitutional. So, it's very, since he's falling in line with the standard right-wing viewpoint, which is, let's be authoritarian, let's bring back law and order. And in the process of bringing back law and order, by the way, the President of the United States is threatening to eliminate law and order by ignoring the First Amendment and the Constitution. That's the supreme law of the land. So you can't say, like, I'm the law and order guy. It's like how Trump defended torture on the campaign trail in the same breath as saying, I'm the law and order guy. You can't say you're the law and order guy as you're saying, I believe in torture. Torture is against the law. So again, but you see the mindset. The mindset is, no, whatever we do is right because we got the badges, we got the uniforms, and we think we're on the right side. So, and that's the path to hell. As soon as you define yourself as the good person by definition, as soon as you do that, then you can rationalize and excuse away the worst crimes and actions. Because you've already decided, I mean well, I'm the good guy. So therefore, when I do it, it's okay because it's different. But it's not. It's not. It's those tactics that are bad in and of themselves, which is why I think you need to be principled in your stance against any kind of offensive violence. But the beating people past curfew was just tough to watch, and there's been a lot of police brutality, and he's totally unconcerned about that, and he's only talking about, like, I honestly would respect conservatives at least pulling a both sides thing. I know it's easy to mock the both sidism stuff, but if a conservative goes out there and says, hey, I'm against the rioting, I'm against the looting, of course, but I'm also against the police brutality, I can respect that. But what Tucker's doing is the whole, look at these bands of thugs who are rioting and looting. We need to restore law and order. And it just so happens that it's easy to show what the cops are doing there, and the rant makes sense in that context as well, now doesn't it? So, final point I'll make is this. And I've made this already, but I'm going to keep bringing it up because I think it's super important. You need to, instead of saying, hey, the government has a crisis of legitimacy, and police brutality sparked that crisis of legitimacy, so let's respond to that by doing more police brutality, further proving the point that we're illegitimate. Instead of doing that, what should have been done is the exact opposite. Which is, okay, obviously George Floyd was the spark that led to these protests. Their main concern is police brutality at the moment. So let's bring up a police brutality bill. Let's have Trump propose or Nancy Pelosi pass through the House. Here's the bill. Body cameras on all cops. They can't turn them off under penalty of law. Ever. They have to stay on. Here's the bill. Community oversight boards for policing all across the country. Here's a bill, special prosecutors in every single instance of police brutality so you don't have the game rigged where prosecutors who know the cops kind of let them off. If George Floyd was the spark that led to the protests, and now we have everybody who killed George Floyd is arrested and they're being charged, and Keith Ellison is handling the case. So we're awaiting justice on that front, okay? So you have that, and then you also substantively address police brutality, then you have a reasonable case to make to people where you say, listen, I'm still with you if you want to peacefully protest and demand other things, sure. But the rioting and the looting, no. We're addressing your concern, see? We're doing it right here. But they don't want to do that. And by the way, I would argue that George Floyd was the spark that got everybody in the streets, but there's a deeper underlying pain that is leading to people snapping. And that pain is the fact that we have a pandemic and we have an economic depression, over 20% unemployment, wages are super low. Like, yeah, people need UBI because we didn't nationalize payroll like we should have. People need UBI, people need Medicare for all. Like, address the root causes to fix the problem. Don't double down on police brutality when you're up against protests that are calling out police brutality. The fact that they don't see this is insanity. So, it's just pathetic. Like, it's just pathetic. This is not getting the kind of intelligent analysis that's needed. Instead, you have Tucker and Fox News people and a lot of people on the right immediately falling into line with their absurd position.